Well, there's three things that you can run into when you're going about your goal. And I would say if you're going to form a goal, if you're going to form a plan, you look about 3 to 5 years out in the future. Because beyond that, you get something called combinatorial explosion. And it means that there's so many variables that you just can't predict. So there's not that much point looking out 20 years. Because like, what the hell do you know about what's going to happen in 20 years? Nothing. 3 years, maybe you can chart a course to 3 years, 5 years, something like that. So that's not a bad segment of time to consider. And then consider what your life would have to be like in order for it to be worthwhile for you. Knowing also what you're going to be like if it isn't worthwhile for you. And what you're going to be like if it isn't worthwhile for you is Cain. That's what you're like, because that's what that story's about. Because Abel's the guy who has a goal and is making the proper sacrifices, and Cain is the person for whom, by his own faults, at least in part, things aren't working out for. And so the default for not doing this is something like building resentment, bitterness, with an underlying, what would you call it? Flavor enhancer of murderous resentment, something like that, which you will act out in the world, which people act out in the world all the time. And it's no wonder, because without this, without something lofty pulling you along, then the baseline is stupid suffering. And you know, if you take an adult dog and you just chain it in the backyard, you know, and we put a collar on it that's too tight so it chafes all the time and it can't even bark, and you know, there's just dirt around it and it's too goddamn hot out in the sun, and maybe you don't give it enough water, you know, it's not going to be a very happy dog. Its basic condition is misery. Well, the same applies to people. So, all right, so you're on your way to, see, you remember you've all probably watched Pinocchio or know about it. One of the things that happens that's really cool in Pinocchio is that when Geppetto decides that he wants his puppet to be a genuine autonomous being, he wishes upon a star. It's a very strange thing, but everybody just swallows it because we don't notice when we're swallowing things that are completely preposterous. You know, it's this animated puppeteer wishes on a star that his puppet is going to become real, and everybody nods their head and goes, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense at all, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't make the sort of sense that we normally associate with sense. It makes a kind of meta sense, and everybody understands it. So this is what Geppetto's doing, is he's elevating his eyes above the horizon, so out of the realm of the worldly, let's say, to the transcendent. And the transcendent will say, for all intents and purposes, you can see the transcendent spread above you in the heaven that arches over us. It's close enough for our purposes. And there's a star there, and a star is something that's eternal, that shines in the darkness. And so Geppetto makes an agreement with the transcendent. He says, look, I'm willing to do whatever it takes that my creation becomes autonomous. Well, that's exactly this situation that you want to set up for yourself. Is like, okay, you got to figure out what star you're going to orient yourself by. And you have to ask yourself, like no one's ever asked you, okay, if you had the choice to make your life worth living, what's your price? What do you need? Just find out, first of all. You just ask. You'll tell yourself, like you'll be afraid because you thought, I'll never get that. It's like, well, lower your sights a little bit then, you know. Don't ask for a 80-foot super yacht in like 6 months. That just means you're stupid. You know, it doesn't mean, you're not, you know, first of all, it's not going to make you happy anyways. You know, it's just not, it's not wise. You're supposed to be asking yourself this question like you're someone you care about. So you imagine you're talking to some 12-year-old kid that you kind of like. Think, oh, it wouldn't be so bad if this 12-year-old kid had a decent life. So you too, it's like, it wouldn't be so bad. The universe wouldn't mind if you had a decent life. If there was a little less suffering on your part, especially if you didn't, you know, foist it off on other people. If there was a little less suffering on your part and you made things a little better everywhere you went, it's like the universe would probably be okay with that. So I think you could get away with it if you're sort of quiet about it. And so ask yourself, okay, so then once you've established your target and you know where you are, then you know what's good for you, because that moves you along. And that happens at a perceptual level. You don't have to think about it anymore. And the experimental literature on that's already quite clear. So for example, if I specify that podium as the target for my action, You know, then I'm happy when I'm walking towards it because there it is and everything cooperating really nicely. But if I specify going to the exit sign that you guys can't see, that this is an obstacle in the front of, then as soon as I specify that, then that's an annoying obstacle. And that's precognitive. It happens immediately. It happens instantaneously. And so it really is the case that your being manifests itself inside these frames. And so what's so cool about that is you can change the frame. It doesn't mean you can like juggle planets or anything like that, but it does give you quite a scope of what? Untrammeled action within the world. And if the frame isn't working out, then you can tweak it, or sometimes you have to make a major adjustment in it, whatever. You don't have to stick to the damn thing like it's the ideology that you're going to die for. It's a tentative plan. It's a work in progress. And that's with the future authoring program, one of the things I recommend for people is that they should do it badly. Because you're not going to get it right anyways, but a reasonable plan is way better than no plan. Plus, a reasonable plan is a plan that has built into it the processes that will enable the plan to get better as you implement it. So you just start with a reasonable plan. So you don't have to worry about whether it's correct. It's not correct. It doesn't matter. It's better than nothing. That's the issue. So, okay, so you've got the world parsed up into things that are making you happy when you look at them, things that get in the way, that produce negative emotion, and then a whole host of irrelevant things, because almost everything's irrelevant. And that's where all the chaos is hiding. The chaos is hiding in what's irrelevant. And that's a very interesting observation, because since the chaos is virtually infinite, it's a real question. So where the hell do you put it? Well, you put it in what you ignore. And you can ignore it as long as it isn't actively interfering with your movement forward. You can assume that it doesn't matter. That it isn't matter. That it doesn't matter. Same thing.